Narcissism and hoarding are two psychological phenomena that, on the surface, may appear disconnected. However, upon closer inspection, these behaviors often overlap in profound ways, driven by deep emotional needs and insecurities. At the core, both narcissism and hoarding stem from an individual's struggle to reconcile their self-worth with the external world, and their inability to let go, whether it be of material possessions or the need for admiration, is rooted in the same emotional landscape. Narcissists, defined by their grandiosity, a need for validation, and a lack of empathy, often turn to materialism as a way to affirm their sense of importance. Meanwhile, hoarders, who struggle with discarding possessions, often attach emotional significance to their belongings, making it difficult to let go of even the most trivial objects. These traits, while distinct in some ways, share emotional motivations that reflect a deeper psychological struggle. Consider the words of Steve Jobs, who famously stated, "It's not about money. It's about the people you have, how you're led, and how much you get it." Though Jobs wasn't speaking directly about hoarding or narcissism, his sentiment applies here. For narcissists, getting it often means acquiring objects that symbolize their success and validate their self-worth in the eyes of others. A 2014 study, published in the Journal of Clinical Psychology, found that hoarders are emotionally attached to their belongings, using them as coping mechanisms to deal with feelings of inadequacy or a lack of control in their lives. Narcissists, similarly, tend to equate their self-worth with their possessions, believing that their material wealth reflects their importance. Take, for example, John, a successful businessman who prides himself on his wealth and status. John's home is filled with expensive furniture, luxury cars, and designer clothing. To the outside world, John appears to have it all, but his obsession with materialism is rooted in a deep-seated fear of inadequacy. By surrounding himself with material wealth, John feels validated, believing that his possessions affirm his importance. This is a common pattern among narcissists, who often view their possessions as extensions of themselves. The relationship between narcissism and hoarding becomes even more evident when we consider the emotional reasons behind both behaviors. Narcissists, driven by a need for external validation, often turn to material objects to fill the void left by their lack of genuine emotional connections. Hoarders, too, use their possessions as a way to cope with their emotional struggles. A 2010 study published in the American Journal of Psychiatry found that hoarders often experience high levels of anxiety stemming from their fear of losing control. For narcissists, this fear manifests as a constant need to acquire more and more possessions, believing that by doing so, they can stave off feelings of inadequacy and maintain their sense of control. This fear of loss is particularly evident in narcissists who hoard, as they struggle to let go of their belongings, even when those possessions no longer serve a practical purpose. Emotional validation is one of the key drivers behind both narcissism and hoarding. Narcissists often view their possessions as a way to gain admiration from others, believing that the more they have, the more important they will be perceived. This need for external validation is reinforced by modern society, which often equates success with material wealth. In today's consumer-driven world, social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok promote a culture of materialism, where individuals are encouraged to showcase their wealth and possessions in order to gain social status. For narcissists, this creates a vicious cycle, as they continuously seek out new ways to validate their self-worth through their material possessions. A 2016 study published in the Journal of Obsessive-Compulsive and Related Disorders found that for many individuals with hoarding tendencies, their possessions serve as symbols of their identity. This is particularly true for narcissists, who often view their material wealth as a reflection of their self-worth. For Sarah, a high-powered executive, her home is filled with clutter, boxes of old clothes, broken furniture, and expired coupons. To others, these items may seem insignificant, but for Sarah, they represent her achievements and status. Letting go of them would feel like admitting failure, and so she clings to them, using them to bolster her fragile sense of self-worth. Another significant emotional driver behind hoarding and narcissism is the fear of loss. Narcissists often fear losing control, and this fear manifests in their inability to let go of possessions. By holding on to material objects, they create a sense of permanence, which helps to alleviate their anxiety. This behavior is particularly evident in individuals with hoarding tendencies, who struggle with the idea of discarding items, even when they are no longer useful. A 2017 study published in Behavior Research and Therapy found that individuals with hoarding disorder often experience intense anxiety at the thought of losing their possessions, as they associate their belongings with their sense of identity and control. Narcissists too experience this fear of loss, but for them, it extends beyond material possessions. They fear losing their status, their power, and their influence, and so they cling to their possessions as a way to maintain a sense of control in their lives. This fear is compounded by the fact that narcissists often struggle with emotional regulation, making it difficult for them to cope with feelings of anxiety and loss. Emotional avoidance is another key factor that drives hoarding and narcissism. Both behaviors serve as coping mechanisms for individuals who struggle to confront their emotions. For narcissists, material possessions provide a way to distract themselves from their emotional insecurities. By focusing on acquiring and maintaining their wealth, they can avoid confronting their feelings of inadequacy. This behavior is reinforced by modern society, which often promotes the idea that success is measured by material wealth. A 2015 study published in Psychological Science found that individuals who hoard often use their possessions as a way to avoid dealing with their emotions. For Sarah, her cluttered home serves as a buffer between her and the emotional pain she experiences in her personal life. By surrounding herself with material objects, she is able to avoid confronting the feelings of inadequacy and failure that plague her. Narcissists, too, use materialism as a way to distract themselves from their emotional struggles. But this avoidance only deepens their sense of emptiness. In today's fast-paced, consumer-driven society, narcissism and hoarding are further exacerbated by the constant pressure to acquire more. Social media platforms, advertising, and modern consumer culture promote the idea that success and self-worth are tied to material wealth, creating an environment where narcissists and hoarders feel validated by their possessions. A 2018 study published in Journal of Consumer Research found that individuals who are exposed to high levels of consumerism are more likely to develop materialistic tendencies, as they are constantly bombarded with messages that equate possessions with self-worth. For narcissists, this creates a never-ending cycle of material obsession, as they continuously seek out new ways to validate their self-worth through their possessions. Social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok further exacerbate this behavior, as individuals are encouraged to showcase their wealth and status in order to gain followers and likes. The impact of narcissism and hoarding extends beyond the individual, affecting their relationships and daily life. Narcissists, who are often consumed by their need for admiration, may struggle to maintain healthy relationships, as they view others as tools to validate their self-worth. Hoarders, too, may experience strained relationships, as their attachment to their possessions often takes precedence over their connections with others. A 2013 study published in Journal of Social and Clinical Psychology found that individuals with narcissistic tendencies often struggle to form meaningful relationships, as they are more focused on maintaining their self-image than on connecting with others. This is particularly true for individuals with hoarding tendencies, who may isolate themselves from friends and family in order to protect their possessions. For Sarah, her cluttered home has become a source of tension in her marriage, as her husband struggles to understand her attachment to her belongings. Similarly, John's obsession with material wealth has strained his relationships with his friends, as they feel that he is more focused on his possessions than on maintaining genuine connections. So, how can individuals break free from the cycle of narcissism and hoarding? The first step is to recognize the emotional drivers behind these behaviors and to seek help. Therapy, particularly cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, has been shown to be effective in helping individuals with narcissistic and hoarding tendencies confront their emotional struggles and develop healthier coping mechanisms. A 2012 study published in Journal of Cognitive Psychotherapy found that individuals with hoarding disorder who participated in CBT experienced significant reductions in their symptoms as they learned to challenge their emotional attachment to their possessions and develop new ways to cope with their anxiety. Similarly, individuals with narcissistic tendencies can benefit from therapy, as it helps them to develop a stronger sense of self-worth that is not tied to their possessions or status. For Sarah, therapy has been a crucial part of her recovery, as it has helped her to understand the emotional reasons behind her attachment to her belongings and to develop new ways to cope with her feelings of inadequacy. John, too, has benefited from therapy, as it has helped him to recognize that his self-worth is not tied to his material wealth and to develop more meaningful relationships with others. In conclusion, narcissism and hoarding are deeply intertwined behaviors that are driven by emotional insecurity and a need for validation. Whether through material possessions or admiration from others, individuals with narcissistic and hoarding tendencies use these behaviors as a way to cope with their emotional struggles. However, these behaviors only serve to deepen their sense of emptiness, as they are unable to find true fulfillment through materialism. By recognizing the emotional reasons behind these behaviors and seeking help, individuals can break free from the cycle of narcissism and hoarding and develop healthier ways to cope with their emotional struggles. As Brené Brown once said, "We cannot selectively numb emotions. When we numb the painful emotions, we also numb the positive emotions." In the case of narcissists and hoarders, their attempts to numb their pain through materialism only serve to numb their ability to experience true joy and connection. By confronting their emotions head-on and seeking help, they can begin to find true fulfillment, not through their possessions, but through meaningful connections with others. Thank you for sticking around till the end. If you found this discussion insightful, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives into human behavior and relationships.